1 million manufacturing jobs gone in 4 years. Europe didn't lose to China, it lost to physics. For 150 years, Europe built the world's most sophisticated industrial base. Then, in 2022, something broke. I'm breaking down the 3 systems that made Europe industrial, the shock that fractured them, and why factories leaving now aren't coming back. 2,000 euros per megawatt hour. That's what German factories paid for electricity in August 2022. American manufacturers paid 150 euros. When energy costs 13 times more than competitors, you can't make steel, produce chemicals, or run aluminum smelters. Production stops. Germany's largest chemical producer cut production 30% in 2023. Natural gas became too expensive to convert into ammonia, plastics, fertilizers. Input costs exceeded output value. Europe's industrial power was built on 3 pillars. The first was cheap Russian pipeline gas. For 50 years, Europe ran its factories on natural gas, costing a fraction of global prices. German chemical plants, Italian steel mills, French refineries, all designed around one assumption: energy stays cheap. The second was integrated supply chains. A German supplier makes precision parts, ships them 200 kilometers to Italy for assembly, then to France for final production. The system works because everyone's within a day's drive, and energy costs are identical. The third was high-value precision manufacturing. Europe competed on complexity, not cheap labor. Things requiring decades of institutional knowledge, specialized machinery, chemical processes taking years to perfect. Then 2022 happened. Russian gas stopped. Europe switched to LNG imports, liquefied natural gas from the US, Qatar, Australia. But LNG costs 3 to 4 times more than pipeline gas. Not geopolitics, thermodynamics. You spend energy to freeze it, energy to ship it, and energy to heat it back up. By the time it reaches Germany, you've paid for the gas 3 times over. That's a bill physics sends you, and subsidies can't pay it. To put this in perspective, in 2019, paying your industrial energy bill was like buying a coffee. In 2023, it was like buying the coffee machine. Every single day. Germany's largest chemical producer saw energy costs jump from 2 billion euros to 8 billion euros in 1 year. Steelmaker ArcelorMittal cut European production 25%. Fertilizer plants shut down permanently. The cascade? When Germany's largest chemical producer cuts ammonia production, global fertilizer supplies tighten. Food prices rise 8%. When German steel production drops, Italian automotive suppliers lose their local source. They pay more or relocate. When energy-intensive manufacturing leaves, specialized suppliers start looking elsewhere. Industrial ecosystems collapse quietly, one supply contract at a time. The obvious solution? Build renewables, import LNG, subsidize the difference. Except this affects you regardless of where you live. Your smartphone uses European chemical precursors. Your car probably uses European precision components. Your medications depend on European pharmaceutical ingredients. When Europe's largest chemical producers cut production, you lose supply chain stability everywhere. Watching from Vietnam, Bangladesh, the Philippines, this is your window. European companies are scouting sites for 2025 expansions. Engineering jobs, supply contracts, industrial clusters leaving Europe land somewhere. This is the biggest manufacturing redistribution since China opened in the 1980s. In the US, your inflation was partly made in Europe. When European chemical supplies tightened, prices spiked globally. In Europe, You paid double for electricity, while factories announced US relocations. Everyone pays more for everything when a major manufacturing hub destabilizes. More distance means more cost, time, risk. But even if natural gas dropped to 2019 levels tomorrow, factories wouldn't return. Here's why. March 2023. A German automotive supplier's energy contract expires. Tuesday, finance runs numbers. Production costs exceed revenue by 15%. Wednesday, emergency board meeting. Thursday, they announce US expansion in South Carolina. 2 weeks later, the German plant moves to reduced schedule. 6 months later, 40% of workers take severance. This happened 200 times across Europe in 2023. A European engineer scrolls LinkedIn for Houston positions. An American consumer sees delivery delayed on orders. A Vietnamese official hosts his third European factory tour this month. When Europe's industrial base fragments, shockwaves hit everywhere. Where are factories going? 3 places. The first is the United States. Germany's largest chemical company is building a $10 billion complex in Louisiana. Northvolt paused European battery expansion, pivoted to North America. Automotive suppliers opening Gulf Coast and Midwest facilities. Why? Shale gas costs 1/3 of European LNG. The Inflation Reduction Act adds massive subsidies. You're producing next to the world's largest consumer market. The second is the Middle East. European chemical companies building capacity in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Natural gas at source costs 10% of European imports. When making petrochemicals, starting next to an oil field changes everything. The third is Asia. Precision manufacturers relocating to Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh for supply chain proximity. When customers are Asian electronics makers and automakers, being 12 hours closer by ship matters. You're near the world's fastest growing consumer markets. These aren't temporary. Northvolt signed a 20-year land lease in Canada. A $10 billion chemical facility is a 30-year decision. You don't relocate chemical plants back. Everyone says energy prices will normalize and factories will return. The factories signing long-term leases in Louisiana and Jeddah disagree. Even if energy costs dropped, the industrial ecosystem is fragmenting. Once that happens, subsidies can't rebuild it. Manufacturing needs dense networks. When a German supplier relocates to South Carolina, their Italian customer loses local access. They pay more or relocate too. When both move, their logistics provider loses volume and raises rates. The machine shop servicing both loses contracts. One departure triggers 5 more. The ecosystem thins. Competitive advantage disappears. European politicians announce reindustrialization plans, green subsidies, manufacturing revival. But industrial electricity demand is down 15%. Equipment orders to Asia up 40%. Policy says one thing, capital flows show another. China's manufacturing ecosystems are getting denser, those ironclad supplier networks I've covered before, still compounding. The US is reindustrializing with policy support and energy advantage. Europe's ecosystem fragments with no structural fix. You can't subsidize away 10 times energy cost differential. You can't rebuild 50 years of supplier relationships in 5 years. You can't force companies to stay when shareholders demand profitability. Deindustrialized Europe looks like the UK. Services growing, manufacturing shrinking. Higher import dependence, persistent trade deficits. Europe's GDP shifts composition from making things to servicing things. So what does this actually mean going forward? 3 things. Your cost of living. Manufacturing concentrating in fewer regions means fragile, expensive supply chains for the next 3 to 5 years. Global power shifts to whoever controls production. Countries absorbing these factories gain leverage in trade and technology for decades, and opportunity redistributes. Emerging markets see massive industrial investment. Developed economies face continued supply volatility. The global middle class rebalances around new manufacturing centers. Europe's window to reverse this closed 18 months ago. But here's what determines what happens next. Not every country can capture these relocating factories. Some are landlocked. Some lack ports. Some have wrong infrastructure. Geography decides winners before policy even starts. And while Europe loses its industrial base, China's manufacturing ecosystem keeps compounding, those ironclad supplier networks that make it nearly impossible to replicate. I broke down exactly why in my previous video. Check it out.